Welcome to the Innovator Spotlight, where we bring you remarkable people and solutions in the cybersecurity industry. I'm Armstead Whitney, and I'm the CEO of Apptega, and I'm your host for today's session. And really excited to have Thad Wellen joining us from SecureStrux. So, Thad, welcome to today's program, and why don't you tell us a little bit about SecureStrux?
Well, thank you, Armstead. Thanks for bringing us on board. And a little bit about SecureStrux. We've been around since 2008. We started out doing commander cyber readiness inspections, and that kind of morphed into helping companies get ready for risk management framework and other types of compliance. And that natural progression was for us to start doing CUI assessments about 5 years ago. The team brought me on board almost a year ago now, to almost a full year now, to lead out the CMMC line of business. And I'm just happy to be here today to share you a little bit of what we can do.
Well, that's great. Well, you mentioned CMMC. For those that are joining us that really aren't very familiar with that sort of new up and coming regulatory requirement, what is CMMC exactly, and who is it targeting?
So CMMC right now is targeting the DIB, so the defense industry base. So anybody that's doing work with the DoD, and I say that right now because we've already seen CMMC requirements kind of bleed into some of the other pieces of the federal government. But basically, CMMC is a certification that says that you're meeting a certain level of cybersecurity to be able to do business and execute on a contract. It is technically the future. So the CMMC standards are out there right now. It's based on NIST 800-171, which is the now. So there are current DFARS clauses 252, 204, 7012, and then the new release of some new DFARS clauses that came into effect on 30 November, 252, 204, 7019, 7020, and 7021 that make compliance with NIST 800-171 and eventually compliance with CMMC a requirement to do work with the government.
So how's the government going to certify that these suppliers have met all these requirements? Because before, I think it's been sort of a self-certification or self-assessment. Is that a big change with CMMC? There's going to be some third-party validation?
Absolutely, and that's probably the biggest change with addition of different levels. So 800-171 was an all or none. You had to meet all 110 controls. With CMMC, there's 5 different levels. So starting at CMMC level 1, that is if you're handling what's called federal contract information. It's not publicly releasable, but it's not to the level of protection required for what's called controlled unclassified information. So when you get to CMMC level 3, that's kind of the baseline if you're handling controlled unclassified information. And that kind of matches the 110 controls plus 20 additional controls. And the other part of that is there's actually a level 4 and level 5, and those are for advanced persistent threat type of contracts. So if the government deems that they think that whatever program you're working on might be, actionable intel from the known bad actors around the world to be an advanced persistent threat, then you might be leveraged level 4 and 5. But yes, 800-171 right now has been a self-attestation. So company can do their own internal look or get a third party to come in and help them take a look, but they can attest themselves. With CMMC, it's actually going to be a third-party auditor that's going to come in and actually audit the organization and make sure they meet the requirements. The other big difference is there was POAM items were allowed in 800-171. So you didn't have to be fully compliant on everything as long as you had a plan to fix some of those gaps that weren't fully compliant. With CMMC, you meet all the controls for that applicable level, or you're not going to be able to receive the certification from the third-party auditor.
Right, absolutely. And we're going to do a kind of a demo of the SecureStrux set of products and services here in a few minutes, and we'll kind of dig into that. How can companies just getting started in CMC, I think there's something like 350,000 potential suppliers that have to get CMMC compliant at some point. What are you telling the market or these customers how to get started?
So I'm going to suggest with the now. The now is 800-171, and the other requirements in the DFARS clause. Now, there's still other things that you have to do to make sure that you're compliant with the DFARS clause that are not just listed in 800-171.
Okay.
And we can get into a little bit about that when I do my my demo of some of the requirements as far as DFARS versus what's in 800-171. But what I'm telling clients right now is do their own look, do a deep dive, look at the controls that are required, what is required for NIST 800-171, and then start dabbling into what level of CMMC you believe you think you will need to execute on future contracts.
Yep.
Do your own internal look, because the last thing you want to do is have an outside look come in and say, look, you're not compliant on anything. So do your own internal look, kind of set yourself up for success, come up with some ideas. And then the best thing to do is to bring in a third party to kind of validate what you've already seen and what you kind of are on your roadmap to be able to get compliant. And then, the best thing to do is partner with somebody that has all the tools, that has all the pedigree to be able to perform that type of gap analysis. So that's what I'm suggesting right now. Do your own internal look, and then get a third party to kind of validate what you've seen.
Right. So basically, kind of do an assessment of kind of where you're at, and then use that as help formulate your game plan. You mentioned there's 110 controls. That's a lot to implement, which is kind of the baseline. A lot of companies don't have CISOs or even large IT departments. And what would be the expectation of how long it might take for a company like that from sort of, okay, I'm going to start with the assessment, and then I'll be ready for certification by that audit firm. And you'll probably say something like, budget and time and resources, but generally, what's your thinking as sort of a leader in this industry on sort of the time, which then people can kind of backtrack to figure out when they should get started?
So that's actually a great question. To be honest with you, it's one of the questions that comes up almost every single time I have a conversation with a new potential client. And the first thing I kind of do is I kind of scope out where they stand today. So try to figure out their environment. So if you're talking on-prem environment, it's a single location, you're a small company of 100 or less, we could probably come in and help you engineer a solution to meet all the requirements. And I would say the time frame would probably be anywhere between 3 and 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
For larger companies, I have some roadmaps that I put together for some of the largers that we're dealing with, and we're talking 1 to 2 years for some of them. And it just all depends on the complexity of the environment, the boundary that you're going to set to perform the actual audit against, and then making sure that CUI and anything that you need to protect is within that boundary. So it's very subjective. I'm talking 3 months to 2 years. It all depends on the environment.
That's good to know. But I think a lot of people, because their boards and their CEOs and their heads of sales are asking about this, because CMMC is not just an operational investment of time and resources. It impacts your top line growth as a company to be able to compete, with these DoD contracts, which is ultimately a big driver. Why is the government spending so much time on this? The SolarWinds incident seemed to kind of bring this to light in a big way. But the government has identified this as a critical area to focus on. Why is that exactly?
So here's what has happened over the last 10 years. We know that it took us basically 20 years to develop a stealth aircraft, and it took China 4. We know that there's certain military technologies that took us literally decades to develop, and some of our adversaries were able to not replicate, but to make something very similar. And if you look at them side by side, you'd be like, wow, that looks almost identical. And I think that's part of the problem. So a lot of development is done in the unclassified environment for some of these large defense contracts. And the problem is it doesn't actually go into a classified environment until it gets to a certain point in the project that's actually classified. So there's tons of information that if the adversary is able to circumvent the security controls of a network and start siphoning off data, that's a huge concern. So that kind of came to light with a couple contracts probably about 10 years ago, and the government said, "Hey, look, our defense industry base is the reason why we're innovative, why we're ahead of our adversaries, and we need to make sure that they're doing their due diligence to protect the data that they're creating for us as the government." So, I mean, innovation starts with a defense industry base. So I think it's critical. And I'm a firm believer of this because I was on the other side of the fence. Spent 24 years in the Air Force, and I was on some of those programs that was out in front. I've been to war zones, and I won't get into all those different stories like that. But I take it kind of personal because I've been on the other side of it. So I want to make sure that we're protecting our warfighters. So I do take this a little personal, and I want to make sure that the companies do their due diligence, protect the data, protect the information that we are creating for the government.
That's great. I mean, and it sounds like you mentioned very briefly that other agencies may follow suit behind DoD. What's some of the insights you can give on what to expect there?
Yeah, so we've already seen it, and I'm actually drawing a huge blank. Um, so there's two agencies that I've seen that are federal that are not DoD,
I think
that have
I
included.
think DHS, Department of Homeland Security, might be one.
DHS was one, and the other one is the agency that it's not DLA, but it's the other logistics agency
Okay.
for the federal government, and they've included CMMC language in those contracts. And I just have a feeling as this gets more traction, they're going to realize that CMMC is a good thing. And what they're going to realize too is that a lot of folks that are doing contracts specifically with the DoD are also doing work with the federal
Right.
government.
Right.
So that there might be some overlap. And then, at the end of the day, CUI is a federal requirement. It's not just a DoD requirement, but right now the DoD is the only one that's mandating a certain level of cybersecurity certification to before they're awarded a contract.
So we're talking, if you look at other agencies, even the IRS, which is, they've had some incidents in the last few years, but just look how big that entire ecosystem is. I mean, you're talking about millions and millions of companies just in the U.S. That might need to be CMMC compliant in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, it wouldn't surprise me if some of the state and local governments, they might not go as far as saying you need to be CMMC, level 3, but I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be surprised if they start rolling out the basic requirements of CMMC level 1, which is only 17 controls, but it's basic cyber hygiene.
Yep.
And it's important that companies have basic cyber hygiene when they're doing work for the government, whether it's the local or whether it's state or it's the federal or DoD.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to learn a little bit more about how SecureStrux can help. So I'll stop sharing my screen, and if you want to kind of get your presentation ready, then I'm just going to stop share here. And whenever you're ready, you can just share your screen, and then we'd love to learn a little bit more about how SecureStrux can help companies with CMMC. All
Okay,
right.
so ours is kind of a business flow, and it's a phase process. So we've kind of set up a 3-phase process. And the thing that's unique about SecureStrux that's kind of a different with most of our competitors is there's cybersecurity engineering companies that go out and they engineer a solution, and then there's cybersecurity compliance companies. So the compliance will tell you what's wrong, but they don't have usually folks on their team that can actually help implement. The thing that's kind of unique about SecureStrux is we're a cybersecurity engineering and compliance company. So we can come in, identify all the gaps, and then we can actually help you remediate and engineer a solution to get ready. And then as far as, we are a full MSSP, so we can handle all of your IT and cybersecurity needs and be able to meet all the requirements for CMMC as far as continuous monitoring. So the way that CMMC works is that you don't just get a certification and then, you can forget about, how you manage cybersecurity. You have to make sure that you maintain that compliance throughout the life of the contract.
Hmm.
And you do that with a cyber or a good continuous monitoring program. So it means you're going to be looking at your controls on whether it's a weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, annual basis, and we can help you with those needs. So as you can see on the slide, the first thing we do is we do a gap analysis. So we come in and we identify all the gaps that you have. And like I said, we can do this for either 800, 171, or whatever level of CMMC that you guys are looking for. We have a great tool with you guys, and we use Apptega on every single gap analysis that we perform. So it's basically a repository to be able to gather all the evidence to show where you guys stand. And then we do an out brief and say, this is where you stand, and then a full report. And then from there, we can go into phase 2, which is remediation. So it's fixing all those gaps that we found. And then also a big part of CMMC and a maturity model is making sure that you have fully documented policies and procedures for every single CMMC practice. So that's part of the maturity model process, is making sure that you have a repeatable, sustainable process to be able to manage the controls.
Now, Thad, a quick question is, how
Mhm.
often do you think companies will need to go through the certification process? Is it annually, every 2 years, 3 years, where the continuous monitoring and management remediation comes to fruition from all that effort?
So right now, CMMC, as stated, the accreditation body and the DoD has stated that it's a 3-year periodicity in between certifications. So once you achieve the certification, it's good for 3 years. But the way that ISO 17011, 17020 states, and that's what the companies will have to be that are doing the C3POs, that's the ISO certification. It basically says that you have to have a relationship with that company and make sure that they're maintaining their security posture. If not, then you need to pull the certification. So those are some of the details that haven't been worked out. If the auditor themselves, if the C3PAO, or if the CMMC AB is going to be involved in continuous monitoring. But the bottom line is that it's a requirement to be able to execute that contract. That's in the DFARS language right now. It says that you have to maintain that certification.
I mean,
So
you're
those are
really building a program. It's not just I'm doing these things and then I'm done at all. Like you said, it's building a program, a culture, and then being
absolutely,
held accountable for that. Yeah.
absolutely. It is building a program. It is absolutely an integral part of maintaining and achieving a CMMC certification is a culture. I mean, you have to have a security culture that starts at the top and works its way all the way down to the person on the floor. So it is. So to get back, remediation, like I said, we have a lot of tools and engineers on our team, and then we have channel partners that help us kind of take care of some of the stuff that we don't do internally. So we built relationships with our partners, such as Apptega, and we have a great relationship with all of our partners. But they kind of pick up some of the slack that we, as a company, that don't have to have that holistic look on maintaining CMMC compliance and getting company CMMC ready. So just to get into it, phase 3 is basically that continuous monitoring. It's providing IT and cybersecurity support to meet the requirements of continuous monitoring of our clients.
Yeah, it looks like that you really do provide the full spectrum. So in essence, if an organization really just doesn't know where to get started, they want to, really, offload this to a trusted partner. I mean, you guys literally can do every phase, and I'm guessing as threats change, as requirements change, tools change, you're always going to be out there kind of putting together the right mix of solutions. So basically, an organization can go to SecureStrux and kind of get everything they need. Sounds like.
Yeah, and what we like to do from the get-go, from the time that we do we have those initial conversations to the time we sign a contract to the time that we do a gap analysis, and throughout this entire process, we maintain a relationship with our clients. So as things change, we're engaged. We're keeping our clients up to speed on everything that's going on in the industry. And then the next kind of slide that I wanted to present is just kind of show you an overview of some of the clients that we have.
Great.
So here's a small snippet. And the majority of these clients that are on this list are actually clients that we have performed CUI 800-171 or CMMC gap analysis. And there's actually two total companies on this that are part of our MSSP continuous monitoring solution. So there's just a small snippet of some of the work we've done. We've done probably, I think we're just over the 20 mark for the last 6 months of clients that we have brought on board and done gap analysis. And the majority of our clients, we maintain a relationship and either go into phase 2 or, like I said, into phase 3 of actually providing a complete solution for them.
I mean, you've got some very recognizable names with some industry leaders. Do you only work with large companies, or what sort of the size of company is sort of the best fit for your solutions?
So the funny thing is we're kind of at two ends of the spectrum. So, like you mentioned, there's a lot of small companies that don't have an IT staff or a large security team, so they're looking for an entire solution. And that's kind of half of our base. Our half of our base is that small to small medium. And then the other half of the base are the big boys, L3 Harris, Aerojet, Thales, and some of the other large companies out there. We do work with Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, and those are typically engineering engagements with the biggers. But we have quite a few clients lined up. I'm currently working with Saab AB on helping them get compliant and an engagement, and we're constantly bringing in new clients. And like I said, so two ends of the spectrum: the smalls, the small medium, and then the largest is what our typical base is.
Well, that's great, and congratulations. And I know if we talk again in about a year, this slide will be a lot bigger and build on this momentum for sure.
Yeah, to be honest with you, if I put up our clients that we've done over the last 12 years, it would take 5 or 6 slides to show all the different logos and of companies that we've dealt with. But this is a small little snippet, and I wanted to kind of gather some of the stuff that we've done, basically CMMC type of work for.
Well, congratulations. That's fantastic. Well, I thought we'd kind of next just go to the CyberExchange platform and show our viewers where you guys can be found. So I'm just going to grab the screen real fast from you and go to our CyberExchange site. So let me just go there real fast. And so this is the Apptega CyberExchange marketplace, and it's really the first dedicated cybersecurity marketplace in the world. We've taken best of breed solutions like SecureStrux, and you can find these solutions based on categories or framework, provider and type. And what I'm showing you now is the SecureStrux kind of private marketplace. If I just pick SecureStrux as a provider, and what we've done is we've mapped all of the SecureStrux solutions to all these different requirements. And so, for example, if I, application security, I can keep scrolling, you kind of see all the kind of controls and subcontrols that their solutions map to. And I can also pick, for example, a CMMC, let's say level 3. So let's say I need to do CMMC level 3, and I want to see, where can SecureStrux help me with that? I mean, there's a tremendous amount of coverage. And so you mentioned all those controls, the 110 controls, more controls if you do levels 4 and 5. But anyone interested in CMMC, execution can see where all these great solutions from SecureStrux map, directly to all the requirements. So if I'm not even sure what does event, correlation mean, we provide that, reference material that shows, the IT buyer, what that really is asking for. And then I can, click on any of these listings, these tiles, and it takes me to the SecureStrux listing. And there's some really cool things you'll get here inside of CyberExchange. There is a discount, so we love it when our partners do a discount. There's a description of the categories and subcategories, product specifications. There's a PDF I can read here about this particular package. And there's another great little tool. It's called Analytics, where if I click this button, it's going to show me all the different areas in one snapshot that this particular solution will help me address these areas of my compliance and my CMMC implementation. And the reason why that's important is, going with a full comprehensive package like SecureStrux, it really just means you're going to have better ROI around working with one provider who brings together all the tools. You're going to be able to work with best in breed. You have one partner to work with, but you're going to have this coverage, right, where you don't have to worry about assembling all these tools yourself. And also you'll have a partner that'll help you keep track of these regulatory requirements as they change. So I would say SecureStrux is really big in CyberExchange. And I know a lot of our viewers here who are here because of CyberExchange, when CMMC does bubble up, and it will for many of our viewers, this is where they need to go to learn more about you guys. So really appreciate your time today, Thad. I enjoyed learning more about SecureStrux and hearing your perspectives. And if you want to learn more about SecureStrux, again, just go to CyberExchange and learn more, and we'll be happy to connect you to Thad and his team. So with that, thanks again for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having us on, and we appreciate the relationship we have with you.
Thanks so much. All right, everybody, we'll see you next time on Innovator Spotlight. Thanks again.